If you're having trouble believing in some unseen reality that you have been trying to manifest, this video is for you. And I'm going to get back to a little bit of my roots. And today I'm going to be reading from one of Neville's books called Out of This World. It's a super short book. I'm not going to read the whole book, but I'm going to read some or most of chapter 2, right? And then we're going to chat about it. I'm going to chat about it and delve deeper into some of the highlights of this book and help you guys with your ability to manifest the unseen. This is what I see tripping so many people up. And I struggled with it too, because this is literally something we have to grow out of. We have to get out of this training that we were all trained that 3D reality is real, life is just happening, and here we are plopped into some circumstance, and now we have to adjust to it and deal with it and just make it work. That's not really what's going on here. We are creators, and we are meant to first realize that and then harness our creative ability to create what we want. What else would be the purpose? So, if you're new here, hello, I am your Muse Traci. On this channel, I help you to unlock the power that you already have but can't use. I help you break through where years of trying has failed. And the biggest hurdle of all, I help you go from intellectually knowing all of this information, law of assumption, everyone is you pushed out, creation is finished, assumptions create reality. I help you go from knowing that, being able to say the words, to being able to use that, like I was saying, to create the reality that you want, because that's what you're here to do after all. All right, so let's get into reading some of Neville's book, Out of This World. And I'm actually going to read from chapter 2. Not that chapter 1 isn't amazing, but chapter 2 just has so much meat to it that I want to just focus on this, and I don't want the video to be extremely long. So here we go. Men believe in the reality of the external world because they do not know how to focus and condense their powers to penetrate its thin crust. This book has only one purpose: the removing of the veil of the senses, the traveling into another world. To remove the veil of the senses, we do not employ great effort. The objective world vanishes by turning our attention away from it. You don't have to try hard, just remove your attention from it. We have only to concentrate on the state desired in order to mentally see it. But to give it reality so that it will become an objective fact, we must focus attention upon the invisible state until it has the feeling of reality. When, through concentrated attention, our desire appears to possess the distinction and feeling of reality, we have given it the right to become visible, concrete fact. Did you guys get that? He says, when through concentrated attention, he didn't say effort, he said attention, our desire appears to possess the distinctness and feeling of reality. So basically he's saying when your desire feels real, now you've given it the right to become a visible, concrete fact. So important to understand that. If it is difficult to control the direction of your attention while in a state akin to sleep, you may find gazing fixedly into an object very helpful. Do not look at its surface, but into and beyond any plane object, such as a wall, a carpet, or any other object which possesses depth. Arrange it to return as little reflection as possible. Imagine, then, that in the depth you are seeing or hearing what you want to see and hear until your attention is exclusively occupied by the imagined state. At the end of your meditation, when you wake from your controlled waking dream, you feel as though you have returned from a great distance. The visible world, which you had shut out, returns to consciousness, and by its very presence informs you that you have been self-deceived into believing that the object of your contemplation was real. You got tricked in, your state akin to sleep. But if you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, you will remain faithful to your vision, and by this sustained mental attitude, confirm your gift of reality and prove that you have the power to give reality to your desires, that they may become visible, concrete facts. Did you guys get that? Let me point out the important thing to get here. So he says, basically what he's saying is you go into your imagination, it's real, you feel it, you convinced yourself in your visualization. Then what do? You come back to the visible world, you look around and you go, well, my senses or my imagination deceived me because I don't see it here now. But he says, if you know that consciousness is the one and only reality, you will remain faithful to your vision, to your imaginal act, to what you felt so real just a moment ago. And by this sustained mental attitude, what mental attitude? Remaining faithful to your visualization. You confirm your gift of reality and prove that you have the power to give reality to your desires. So this is where most people kind of go off the mark. They don't maintain the mental attitude. They don't remain faithful. What do? They come back out and they put their faith back in what their senses can see. So then they didn't confirm the gift of reality from their imagination. They went back and you see where most people kind of miss the mark. So you do your visualization. When you come out of it, although the senses deny it, you remain faithful, maintaining that attitude, that mental attitude that is in line with what you saw in your imagination so that you can bring it into your physical reality. All you need to do. Okay, I'm going to continue on now. Define your ideal and concentrate your attention upon the idea of identifying yourself with your ideal. Assume the feeling of being it. The feeling that would be yours were you already the embodiment of your ideal. Then live and act upon this conviction. The assumption, though denied by the senses, if persisted in, this is in italics, will become fact. It's the big if, And again, this is where a lot of people miss the mark. They don't persist. They don't persist because they have that conflicting belief system and they go back to believing 3D facts. You will know when you have succeeded in fixing the desired state in consciousness by simply looking mentally at the people you know. In dialogues with yourself, you are less inhibited and more sincere than in actual conversation with others. Therefore, the opportunity for self-analysis, very key here, arises when you are surprised by your mental conversations with others. So he's not talking about when you go and see your friend at Starbucks in physical reality. He's talking about when you catch yourself mentally talking to people. That's what he's talking about here. If you see them as you formerly saw them, if you're having the same old conversations, you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to the world. So what is he saying? He's saying you're less inhibited with your inner conversations. So those are the ones you pay attention to. Those are the ones that will reflect your changes in consciousness first. Okay? If you assume that you are what you want to be, your desire is fulfilled. And in fulfillment, all longing is neutralized. You cannot continue desiring what you have already realized. Your desire is not something you labor to fulfill. It is recognizing something you already possess. It is assuming the feeling of being that which you desire to be. Believing and being are one. The conceiver and his conception are one. Therefore, that which you conceive yourself to be can never be so far off as even to be near, for nearness implies separation. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Being is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. If you assume that you are what you want to be, then you will see others as they are related to your assumption. If, however, it is the good of others that you desire, then in meditation, you must represent them to yourself as already being that which you desire them to be. It is through desire that you rise above your present sphere, and the road from longing to fulfillment is shortened as you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh were you already the embodiment of the ideal you desire to be. I have stated that man has, at every moment of time, the choice before him, which of several futures he will encounter. But the question arises, how is this possible when the experiences of man awake in the three-dimensional world are predetermined? Such a good question, as his observation of an event before it occurs implies. This ability to change the future will be seen if we liken the experience of life on Earth to this printed page. This is a great analogy. I love this analogy. So, man experiences events on Earth singly and successively in the same way that you are now experiencing the words of this page. So, imagine you're reading a book. Imagine that every word on the page represents a single sensory impression. To get the context, to understand my meaning, you focus your vision on the first word in the upper left-hand corner, and then move your focus across the page from left to right, letting it fall on the words singly and successively. By the time your eyes reach the last word on the page, you have extracted the meaning. He says you have extracted my meaning, Suppose, however, on looking at the page with all the printed words thereon, equally present, you decide to rearrange them. You could, by rearranging them, tell an entirely different story. In fact, you could tell many stories, many different stories. A dream is nothing more than uncontrolled four-dimensional thinking, or the rearrangement of both past and future sensory impressions. So he goes on to talk about dream, but I don't want to get this confused. Let me stop and comment on this. So basically what he's saying here is your reality is just like the words on this page. You can read them from top left and go sequentially, and then you get Neville's meaning, okay? But you could completely rearrange all the words, same words on the page, tell a completely different story. And your reality is exactly the same way. Do you get the point? You have all the words, we're using the analogy of words on a page. You have all the options, let's call them, in your reality. So this includes like versions of people. You have all of these options, and it's up to you how you rearrange them. According to what? Well, of course, according to the story that you want to tell. What story do you want to tell? All the words are there. All the possible variations are there in your reality. It's up to you to rearrange them to tell the story that you want to tell, and better said, to tell the story that you want to live. That's the point that he's making. So he goes on and talks about a dream. I'm going to skip that because the sensory impressions we use to construct our waking dream are present realities displaced in time or the four-dimensional world. All that we do in constructing the waking dream is to select from the vast array of sensory impressions those which, when they are properly arranged, imply that we have realized our desire. With the dream clearly defined, we relax in a chair and induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep, a state which, although bordering on sleep, leaves us in a conscious control of the movement of our attention. When we have achieved that state, we experience in imagination what we would experience in reality were this waking dream an objective fact. In applying this technique to change the future, it is important always to remember that the only thing which occupies the mind during the waking dream is the waking dream, the predominant action which implies the fulfillment of our desire. How the waking dream becomes physical fact is not our concern. Our acceptance of the waking dream as physical reality wills the means for its fulfillment. Okay, so now I'm skipping back to chapter 1 because this is going to tie it all together. To understand how man molds his future into harmony with his assumption, we must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world. For it is to a dimensionally larger world that we go to alter our future. The observation of an event before it occurs implies that the event is predetermined from the point of view of man in the three-dimensional world. Therefore, to change the condition here in the 3 dimensions of space, we must first change them in the 4 dimensions of space. Man does not know exactly what is meant by a dimensionally larger world and would no doubt deny the existence of a dimensionally larger self. He is quite familiar with the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, and he feels that if there were a 4th dimension, it should be just as obvious to him as the dimension of length, width, and height. So I'm going to put in the card up here. I did a video recently about proof that parallel realities exist, and I'm also explaining sort of like the mechanics of the 4th dimension. If you find that interesting, I thought that was a really interesting video. I enjoyed making it. I'm going to put that video up in the card here. So a dimension is not a line. It is any way in which a thing can be measured that is entirely different from all other ways. That is, to measure a solid 4th dimensionally, we simply measure it in any direction except that of its length, width, and height. Is there another way of measuring an object other than those of its length, width, and height? Time measures my life without employing the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height. There is no such thing as an instantaneous object. Its appearance and disappearance are measurable. It endures for a definite length of time. We can measure its lifespan without using the dimensions of length, width, and height. Time is definitely a 4th way of measuring an object. So I'm just going to pause here because the way he's talking about time is confusing a little bit, because he is saying that time is a 4th way of measuring it, but he goes on, this is not actually the 4th dimension, okay? He's going to say what that is in a moment. Again, he is talking about time as if it is, but it's not. Okay, so it's a little confusing. I'm going to keep going and I'll come back to this point. The more dimensions an object has, the more substantial and real it becomes. A straight line, which lies entirely in one dimension, acquires shape, mass, and substance by the addition of dimensions. What new quality would time, the 4th dimension, give, which would make it just as vastly superior to solids as solids are to surfaces and surfaces are to lines? Time is a medium for change and experience because all changes take time. The new quality is changeability. So see, he's saying right here, it's not time. It's not time. And don't come for me in the comments. This is again, another widely debated whatever. Some people say time is the 4th dimension. I disagree. There's time in all the dimensions. So I don't think it's another thing that is unique to the 4th dimension, right? So like length, height, they're unique as you go up. Time is not unique. Again, you can go watch other debates about this, but he's saying now, after the confusion about time, he's saying the new quality is changeability, okay? And this is what's important for understanding how you rearrange things and create the reality that you want, basically. Okay, so here we go. We're going to continue. Observe that if we bisect a solid, its cross-section will be a surface. By bisecting a surface, we obtain a line. By bisecting a line, we get a point. Okay, so that's all the way from 3 dimensions all the way back down to 1 dimension. This means that a point is but a cross-section of a line. Now we're going back up, which is in turn a cross-section of a surface, which is in turn a cross-section of a solid, which is in turn, if carried to its logical conclusion, but a cross-section of a 4-dimensional object. So do you see what he's saying? He's saying the 3 dimension, the 3rd dimension, the one that we live in, is a cross-section of the 4th dimension. We cannot avoid the inference that all 3-dimensional objects are but a cross-section of 4-dimensional bodies, which means when I meet you, I meet a cross-section of a 4-dimensional you. The 4-dimensional self, that is not seen. To see the four-dimensional self, I must see every cross-section, which means like every possibility, every possible version of you, and see them all coexisting. My focus should take in the entire array of sensory impressions which you have experienced on Earth, plus those you might encounter. I should see them not in order in which they were experienced by you, but as a present whole, because change is the characteristic of the fourth dimension. Okay, so there, he's saying it. It's not time. He talks about time in a confusing way and implies that it might be, but he's saying it here. Change is the characteristic of the fourth dimension. I should see them in a state of flux as living, animated whole. If we have all this clearly fixed in our mind, what does it mean to us in this three-dimensional world? It means that if we can move along time's length, we can see the future and alter it as we so desire. The world, which we think so solidly real, is a shadow out of which and beyond we may at any time pass. It is an abstraction from a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, a more fundamental world abstracted from a still more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, and so on and so on and so on into infinity. The absolute is unattainable by any means or analysis, no matter how many dimensions we add to the world. Man can prove the existence of a dimensionally larger world simply by focusing his attention on an invisible state and imagining that he sees and feels it. If he remains concentrated in this state, his present environment will pass away, and he will awaken in a dimensionally larger world where the object of his contemplation will be seen as a concrete, objective reality. Intuitively, I feel that were he to abstract his thoughts from this dimensionally larger world and retreat still further within his mind, he would again bring about an externalization of time. He would discover that every time he retreats into his inner mind and brings about an externalization of time, space becomes dimensionally larger, and he would therefore conclude that both time and space are serial, and that the drama of life is but the climbing of a multitudinous dimensional time block. One of the only times Neville talks about a serial universe. Scientists will one day explain why there is a serial universe, but in practice, how we use this serial universe to change the future is more important. We don't need to understand it all, do we? No, we just need to know how to use this information to create what we want. That's the whole point. Why are we all born with this innate ability to imagine and create if we're not meant to create, if someone else has final say? That's not what's happening here. To change the future, we need only concern ourselves with two worlds in the infinite series. Again, he's talking about infinite parallel realities. The world we know by reason of our bodily organs, our senses, and the world we perceive independently of our bodily organs, our imagination. So, I skipped around a little bit, but hopefully this is helping you to understand what he's talking about and helping you to understand the power of your imagination. And again, how to use your innate, God-given abilities. You're doing it already. You're already creating everything. But what I want to help you do, and the whole purpose of what Neville's teaching and what I'm doing on this channel, is helping you to understand how to do it consciously. Because when you do it consciously, you get more of what you want rather than more of what someone somewhere told you you are, and what you get to have, and how the world works according to them and according to their limitations and according to what they were taught, right? So you have to set yourself free of all of that and use your imagination to give the right to what you want, to be present and, physically available in your reality. That's what you're meant to be doing here. If you want my help with that, that's the work I love to do with my clients. You can find a link down in the description and in the pinned comment where you can click the link and book a call with me, a one-on-one call with me. This is a complimentary strategy call. Call it whatever you want. We're going to get on the call, talk about where you're at, where you want to go, and what's keeping you from going where you want to go. And we'll see if I'm a good fit, if we're a good fit to work together, and we'll figure that out on that call. So if you want my help, click the link down below. Thank you all so much for watching this one. I appreciate each and every one of you. Leave me a comment down below as well, and I'll see you in the next video.